Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be a first impressions and review on the new Madison Beer and Morphe collaboration palette. It is called the Channel Surfing Artistry palette. So it is the look that I'm wearing right now, so make sure you stay tuned so you can see my thoughts and review on the palette itself. But before you jump in, make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel, and make sure you hit that notification bell so that you can be updated whenever I post new videos. Let's go ahead and get started. So for today's look, I've already gone in and done my base. I was testing out a few products that I got in a recent TJ Maxx and Target haul. So I am going to be doing an all-day wear test on these in addition to testing out the new Madison Beer Morphe collaboration. So it's kind of the perfect combination of shimmers, neutrals, warms, cool tones, and I think it's beautiful. I actually haven't tried a Morphe palette before, but when this one came out and the colors that are in it, I knew that I had to try it. So I think I'm gonna go in first. I do need to still put on my primer here. I'm gonna be using my very worn 24-hour Smashbox Photo Finish eye primer. This was one I picked up on an Ulta Daily Steals a long time ago and I've been using that I have really been liking. So I just tapped that on my lid, kind of dabbing it in here. I'm gonna let it sit and let it set in just a little bit before I go in with my first color. I think that I'm going to do kind of like a nice fall look, maybe concentrating on these colors here. But we'll see how everything starts. I'm definitely gonna go in with the lighter color here to start. I'll have to pull up, let me see if I can find where the shades are. It only comes on this like plastic insert that they have. So I will do my best and try to keep this in front of me so I can see which colors it is that I'm using. So I believe the first color that I'm gonna go in, this color at the top here, is called White Rabbit. I'm just going to go in with my IT Cosmetics kind of like flat, I guess it's called a shading brush. So I'm just gonna go in with this kind of White Rabbit color and I will kind of tap that on the lid here just to kind of give it a little bit of an additional neutral base. So that's going on well. It's actually blending pretty well. You know, setting a nice kind of like base. I know it's just a neutral color, but for me, I mean, if even sometimes these white and light colors can be patchy whenever you're trying to put them on. Okay, so after that, I am going to go in with, this is a LUXIE 206 brush. It's called the Tapered Blending. So I think I'm gonna go in to start maybe with this shade right here, this kind of caramel shade, which I believe, if I'm looking at this correctly, is called Jericho. So I'm just gonna kind of tap into that. I will say from the beginning, there's a pretty big amount just by tapping my brush. There's a good amount of kickback that's coming off of the pan there. Okay, so I'm not seeing, I guess, too much color payoff, I would say. It's starting to build up, but it's definitely not something, at least this shade, that is super pigmented from the beginning. It's definitely pretty, and I think it's maybe just something that you have to build it up a little bit, but it's definitely a pretty shade. The mirror in the palette is really nice. Just kind of going back and forth, doing some. So I will say you have to work a little bit for this shade at least, but you know, every palette has that one shade where it doesn't go in perfectly from the beginning. And maybe this is that shade. So we'll see. I'm gonna try and use a variety of them so I can get an idea of how much kickback, if it's dusty, if it's creamy. So I think that's good for a base. I think I'm gonna try and go in with this shade right here, which is called Baby. I'm gonna try not to blind you, so this one here. And kind of rub that a little bit over that Jericho shade that I just used. Okay, so that, I mean, at least on this fluffy brush, again, it is a shimmer, and shimmers don't always work well on this type of brush, at least for me, but I'm not really getting, if you can see, I'm really not getting any sort of payoff just by using one of these brushes. So let me see if I can build up the look a little bit more with like a matte, and then go in with a little bit of more of a concentrated brush to see if I will get more payoff then. So I think I'm gonna try and go in instead with maybe this little bit more of a rusty color here, which is called Devil in a Dress. So this one looks like it could be pretty pigmented, so I am gonna tap in lightly with this and make sure and tap that off. I'm gonna go in a little bit over that shade and just kind of blend it up. Actually went in with the wrong shade. I like to sometimes when I'm using new palettes just to make sure that I don't go in too heavy-handed if it turns out to be the one shade in the palette that is super pigmented. I do like to kind of dab it a little bit to see how much color payoff I get just from that, because it's a good indicator, at least for me, how much payoff there's going to be for the shade. So that one's pretty good. I will say though, for how dark this shade looks in the pan, I would have expected it a little bit darker. Again, it could be that it's just the type of brush that I'm using, that if you used a more concentrated brush, that it would have a little bit more payoff depending on where you're using it. Okay, so it's starting, like, you definitely can build it up. And I mean, the price of this palette, I believe, is about $22. I think it could definitely be a good universal palette for someone that wants to use the neutrals, but also wants to have some fun shades and not have to buy a separate palette. Okay, so I'm going to go in now with, I'm gonna try one of the shimmers, maybe across part of my lid, and I'm gonna go in with this flat brush again and try this color here. I don't know if we can see that, this color here, and that is the shade, it's called C137. So hopefully, I'm hoping that since this is a little bit more of a flat brush, that I might get some more color payoff. If not, I will go with my finger to see if maybe this is just one of those shadows where your finger works best. Okay. So definitely, as you can see, there is a lot of glitter and a lot of product on here on my brush, but definitely not on my eyelid. So I'm gonna go in with my finger and see if this is something where I can build it up using my finger. So I'm gonna use my ring finger and kind of dab that along the lid. Okay, so let's see if we can build this up. I'm gonna try and use a little bit of a closer mirror. It looks beautiful in the pan, and even if you like swatch it on my finger here, but it's not really giving me more than just kind of sporadic glitter on the lid. So I'll go in and I'm gonna try and match it on my other eye, just so I kind of am consistent with what's on the lid. But I definitely think that that one, for me at least, is kind of a dud. And I'm really sad because that was one of my shimmers that I was really looking forward to because of the color. So hopefully, and yeah, there's a little bit of fallout with glitter. As you can see, it's kind of just like glittery, and I don't really like the glitters, I like the shimmers. Yeah, so that one's kind of disappointing. So maybe we will go in and try this one here. I'm gonna try it on a Sigma Domed Blending E43 brush, if you can see that. This was actually part of a old TJ Maxx haul that I did, and I was so excited. I don't have too many Sigma brushes, and so far, every time I've used this, it's been great. So we'll see, because I know this typically works well in my crease, how it works with this shade. So I'm just gonna tap this in. Again, it looks like it's kind of glittery, what's coming off. Yeah, nothing is really coming off with that. I'll try it on this eye again, but again, it's not really giving you much color besides, it's adding some color, but it's patchy and it's just glittery. It doesn't seem like it's a good shade. Okay, so maybe in this one, the glitters are not gonna pan out, which is really sad because the colors in this are pretty, like they're really pretty, and this would be a great palette for someone who is looking for that universal palette that doesn't need something too crazy. So I can get a little bit of shimmer and a little bit of depth. I'm going to tap into my tried and true Tartelette in Bloom palette just so I can get a little bit of shimmer on the lid, and then I'll go in with some of the other matte shades. I won't even show you this palette. It is so old, but I like to go in with the shade Funny Girl whenever I'm going, but I just need a little bit of like that neutral shimmer color. It is so buttery. It is definitely one you have to go in with your finger. I figured that out. Maybe it's a bit too much, but I mean, trying to go over with at least to give some coverage where that shimmer and the glitter from those Morphe shades just aren't cutting it. Okay, so I'm gonna go back in and see if I can kind of finish. I'm going to use the Morphe M514 brush here to kind of go and blend out a little bit more, but I think I'm gonna try and pull it together and then that'll be it. Overall, I'm kind of underwhelmed by this palette. The matte shades are really nice, and I guess if you are drawn to the matte shades in this palette, it's something that maybe for $22, if you have the money and want to invest in something where you won't be using half the shades, then that's kind of your own decision. But I would say for me, it's definitely something where maybe a more experienced makeup artist could make those work, but that's just not what I want to do. I want to have a palette where I can go in and I can use every shade and not have to work really hard for it. But at this point, I'm kind of underwhelmed. So I'm gonna go in to finish with this color here, which is the color, I believe, let's see if I'm correct, it's called Fight Club. So I'm just gonna lightly tap this brush in there, kind of go over, blend it a little out. I noticed I have this one patch in the corner of this eye that gets a little patchy. It seems like no matter what I'm using. Okay. So I think overall the look is okay. I am gonna go in, like it's pretty. And it's something that I think you could work with and maybe figure out. But for me personally, I just don't think that it lived up to my expectations of what the palette was gonna be. So I'll go ahead and just kind of quickly swatch on my fingers some of the other shimmers. So I'll go in with, this is called Stained Glass, which is this really pretty kind of like white light color right here. But as you can tell on the finger, out of my finger here, it looks pretty in the pan, but the color, like the payoff here, it is, you can tell it's kind of patchy, it's kind of dusty and glittery, and they look a little bit like that in the pan, but I was hoping it'd be one of those shimmers where you just have to kind of get past the first little layer and then they're super buttery. But swatching, yeah, they all are kind of giving like the same, you can tell they're just not, they're not super, I guess, buttery, creamy, which is what I look for personally when I'm looking for a shimmer in a palette. And that's just not the case with this one. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of my look and I'll be right back. Okay, so this is the final look. I went ahead and went in and completed with eyeliner, mascara, and lips and brows. So this is the overall look. So after everything is completed, I definitely think that I was able to salvage the look. It's nothing dramatic. It's a nice, like you could say, everyday fall look. I'll go ahead and kind of give you what it looks like with the rest of the makeup on. But I definitely think that it worked. but I don't think personally it's a palette that I'm gonna be reaching for in the future. For me, the shimmers or the glitters that are in the palette were kind of a fail for me, at least for my personal taste. I like more of a buttery, creamy shimmer that you can put in multiple places, and this was more of a glitter that really had no pigment to it. I definitely, again, had to go in with the Tarte to supplement that so that I could complete the look and get that depth that I was looking for. So if you're someone that's looking for more mattes and those colors, and you're okay with not using the glitter or shimmer shades in the palette and those mattes will be enough to make the purchase worth it for you, then by all means, get the palette. But just for me personally, I don't like to have palettes where I can't use all of the shades. So that is my review on the Morphe collaboration with Madison Beer. I hope that this will help you if you're on the fence about getting the palette and maybe you have preferences like me and it might not be worth it, or maybe you're someone who, you know, is willing to put in the times, or you like having those glitters. That is the end of this video. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you can be updated whenever I post next, and have a great day. Morphe collaboration palette. It is called the Channel Surfing Artistry palette. So it is the look that I'm wearing right now. So make sure you stay tuned so you can see my thoughts and review on the palette itself. But before you